It was one of those early Shetland starts, and the weatherman was promising no rain. And with well over 20 hours of daylight, which is really 2 ordinary days back to back, both Jill and I were finding that we were needing less and less sleep. I felt supercharged by all this sailing and long hours of daylight. Jill slightly less so, but 3 o'clock starts and 11 o'clock ends were becoming fairly normal for both of us. Then we came through the narrow neck of the Sound, and they appeared, that most ubiquitous yet most elusive of marine mammals, harbour porpoises. They frequent the narrow entrances to sea lochs and estuaries, working the places where the tides run strongest and where the eddies and back currents confuse the fish and break up their shoals. The ebb is the best time to see them in action. The fish are returning to the relative safety of deep water after foraging in the shallows further up the lochs. The name porpoise means fish pigs, and these successful blubbery sea mammals have an amazing range of habitats. I've personally seen them 20 miles inland working the shallow, silty, muddy surges of the Humber, and now here they are in these pristine deep water voes at the very top end of Britain. They're smaller than they look, just over 4 feet long and the weight of a fat bloke. They pretty much ignore us sailors. A fin or 2 glanced here or there, and then they're off again. Frustrating things to film. Here's the thing, in one study into post-mortems on harbour porpoise corpses found on beaches, 1/3 of them had been killed by dolphins. You can see the damage that inane dolphin grin can do to the delicate skin of a rival cetacean. So stick that in your pink sparkly dreamcatcher book of cute facts about bloody dolphins. We headed on around the corner, and just as we turned our binocs onto the red sand of Raywick, the sun popped out. It would have been rude to pass on by, so we turned in for a closer look. And then dropped the hook onto the sandy bottom. A 360 degree was in order. Not bad at all. Then we noticed that the terns were going bonkers, which is often a sign of a predator, and up here that usually means a human or an otter, and there were no humans at the centre of this aerial kerfuffle.
Terns are doing their nuts. Steady. There it is. See it?
Yeah.
And there's an otter we've just spotted in the water. We don't know whether it's come out on the shore.
There are over 1,000 otters in Shetland. They're an odd population on 2 counts. First of all, they hunt in daylight. They have to up here because there's not enough night to go round, and it's so long since they've been hunted for their pelts that they all but ignore human beings. Otter spotting is now a bit of a tourist industry in Shetland. Otters aren't really marine mammals. They need fresh water to drink and to wash the salt off their fur, so their halts are always by a freshwater stream, even though they spend all day hunting along the seashore. They're also buggers to film. The terns, on the other hand, are kind enough to come to the camera and try to attack me and the hairy microphone, which they really hate.
moving.
So we did as they asked and retreated from the field of conflict to the placid sandy beach. Jill doesn't really feel that she's been anywhere until she's swum there. 5 strokes is the minimum in her book.
Goldfish thing. Here comes the sun on it, Pop. Wow, look at that! We're going up, I guess it's Wisedale Voe, avoiding a thing called Billy Bar, which is a shallow spot. And then into Sand Sound, and then into a place called the Firth, which is looks like a fantastic anchorage. So there you can see the gap we're going to go through, which leads to Sand Sound. So my wife is going to navigate us through it safely. She's consulted the charts. She knows exactly where the shallow spots are. Got a single reef in the main today. One thing about Shetlanders, they do have a brilliant view from their houses.
As we came up through the narrow, shallow bit of Sand Sound, the houses started to appear. Small, low, windproof and cheapish to heat. As glorious as the summer days are long, the winter nights must be terrible things to endure. When the wind comes howling at you for hour after hour from glowering dark winter skies and for months on end. The locals say that if you can do 4 winters, then you can stick it for the rest of your life. I couldn't hack one of them. And just around the corner, here it is, what is almost certainly Britain's best man cave. Just imagine building a perfect clinker dinghy in there, and then opening the doors and launching it straight into the Sound.
Okay, so this church was apparently built by the Spaniards from the Spanish Armada, who, after trying to take over England, escaped from the English and disappeared around the top of Scotland, and were welcomed with open arms by the Scottish. Perfidious Scots again, trying to do down their best neighbours. This house here was built by a local laird using stone that he nicked from Scalloway Castle. This is true.
Came up here expecting to find a really nice shelter spot, and the wind is just howling down here. So we're not going to stop here. Turn around.
So we did the decent thing and turned south looking for a better place to overnight.
This is our last day in Shetland, so and it's been pretty good. We've seen sea otters and porpoises. It's been a great time. Tomorrow at about 3 o'clock in the morning we're going to head off for Cape Wrath. It's 145 miles, so that'll be a day and a night and a day is the plan. That's what I hope it'll be. The wind is supposed to be quite kind to us. Let's hope it is. But I've got 6 places to hide along the way. I've got Westray, Stromness, Scrabster, Loch Erribol, there's Kyle of Tongue, and then there's those 2 in the wrong order, and then the next thing is Lochinburvie, I think it is, which is just round the corner. But the Shetlands has been good, very good. Quite a few days sitting down below waiting for it to stop raining, the wind to stop howling, but we've had some great sailing days. The navigation around here is good fun. Yeah, I mean, they're all on the chart and they're all reasonably well marked. These ones are horrible. Look at these. Where are you? There. Nasty little things, you.
As we came down towards Scalloway, the general bustle started to rise, and there, another yacht. 2 a penny in the Solent, but still rather exciting to see up here. Scalloway. Feast your eyes on that for a natural harbour, my friends. No wonder it was the capital and legal heart of Shetland. This place was the major settlement, the inlet, with the best harbour, where the important stuff happened. Control Scalloway and you control the whole archipelago, because even 1,000 years ago, you could cater for big 100-foot-long ships like the Draken Harald here. There are now about as many people living in Scalloway as there are otters in Shetland, although to that 1,000 you can add all the people who work in and around the town and who choose to live out along the edges of the Bowes, where they can live in those perfect little houses with millionaire views. We had many more hours of daylight, and Scalloway is a cracking little place with lots of things to keep you interested. I love the mix of architecture here, from engineered perfection to stone cold blockwork. And there, to top it all, is the castle. Even before the Vikings, there was a broch here that was continuously occupied for 600 years. Then the Vikings came, of course, and killed everybody. They held the islands and raided Scotland for another 500 years until the Scottish monarchy took them over in 1472. They brought Christianity and literacy and sent in their hardest bastards to run the place. The bastards based themselves in Scalloway because everything of any importance had to come through here. With deep water coming right in close to the shore. The shelter isn't perfect, but it is pretty good, although I understand a southerly gale can make it a bit lumpy.
Is where they try to teach fishermen not to be greedy. It doesn't work. And here is a McGregor.
Scalloway has an amazing range of building styles, along with the occasional flash of insanity, such as the entirely fictitious Scal Air, which appears to have picked up a life of its own. And there, to top it all, is the castle. Those Scottish toffs really knew how to build impressive, beautiful, habitable, yet eminently defensible houses, because no one can pack a long-term grudge like a Scottish landowner. They make the mafia look like forgiving aunts. This house here was really expensive, even in 1600 when the building works were started. It took 7 years to construct, and it was built by the Earl Patrick of Shetland. His dad was the bastard son of King James V of Scotland and his favourite mistress, the splendidly monikered Euphemia Elphinstone of Stirling. Those were the days, when you could get to the top just by being a bastard, or even the son of a bastard. Earl Patrick was an even bigger sod than his dad and had this magnificent pile built using slave labour, hand-picked from the local peasantry. It took 7 years to create, and this place would have had Kevin MacLeod from Grand Designs in ecstasy over the pile. You can see the way they've changed the stonework, just for fun. Earl Patrick lived here for just 2 years, in some splendour apparently. Lovely wall hangings, furniture from Italy, gilt all over the shop, and just to keep out the Scottish damp, the place burned its way through 23 tonnes of peat a year, mostly brought here by the unpaid peasants, of course. Earl Patrick wasn't only a first-rate slave driver, but was also a talented spreadsheet jockey who kept immaculate records of the taxes he levied on his impoverished and overworked Shetland serfs. The other local Shetland toffs left Earl Patrick to his bullying until he got bored and started raiding their properties and poaching parishioners to further swell the ranks of his burgeoning building crews. They eventually got so fed up with his constant raiding and stealing that the local aristocracy petitioned the Scottish king, who was by now Earl Patrick's uncle, to have him shipped out of Shetland, so that the difficult dissolute Earl was summoned to Edinburgh, where he was duly charged with not being very nice to his neighbours and incarcerated for 5 years. Eventually, keeping him in chokey was costing so much that the deep state dreamed up a treason charge and had him beheaded at the age of 50. Scottish toffs, they were and are no better than their English counterparts. Why he looks so happy in this council-commissioned modern representation of his demise is a mystery known only to the artist and the council bod who signed off the work. Later on there was the usual fishing boom of the late 1800s, where large numbers of foreign crews came and spent 15 years cleaning out all the haddock and herring that had been feeding the locals for centuries. Then it was just sheep and trawling until the oil arrived in the 70s. Scalloway, we like the place. There's a good energy about it, lots to look at and admire here, not least the boats. And of course the sign from the bank, here to help, but only for a single hour on Wednesday mornings.
The whole Shetland experience has been great. Okay, there's been the odd day when we've been sitting in the boat waiting for the wind to stop blowing. Vidlin Voe, I guess, was the low point. I think it was 3 days we were there, and there was really nothing there at all. Shetland is a fantastic place to live. There's money here, we've got great houses, we've got great cars. I think most of their culture comes from the TV. I mean, that's true of all of us, but it comes from the TV. There is culture here, but they've accepted the outsiders. But if you wanted to live somewhere comfortable, safe, good facilities, really nice house overlooking the sea, good cars, low crime, this would be the place to come. But the winters, bloody hell, how do they put up with the winters? I have no idea. And the summers, you know, these long days are really nice, but I don't know. Lots of the blokes build boats. They've got good garages, so they build stuff in the wintertime. They mess with boats, and that's not a bad way of spending your time. Orkney, there's no economy there. Visually it's great, but apart from sheep and tourists, bit of fishing, that is pretty much it. And so I didn't like the big tour ships coming in. There's several every week, too many. So tomorrow we're going to sail towards Cape Wrath. Weatherman is talking about 3 nice days, 3 pretty good days. Not much wind tomorrow, picking up a little bit Saturday. Got 160 miles to do, so I'll have to keep the boat going. Jill has never done anything like it. She doesn't like the idea of doing an overnight. With any luck, it should be possible to do it in a day, a long day, a short night, and a long day the next day. We'll see how it goes. But the wind should be in the east, about 10-12 miles an hour tomorrow, so that could die completely. And then 15 the next day, I think. Shetland. It's a great place, isn't it? Look at that. It's a sort of Scandinavian lifestyle these people live. And I guess if you've got an efficient house, there's no need to be cold. But in the wintertime, it gets light about 10:30, 11:15, and then by 3 o'clock it's getting dark again. I know it's only for a short part of the winter, but that would be really hard to tolerate. But I mean, look at the houses. Their houses are great. It's not a tatty house here. And look at that. Fancy living over there.
We had a quiet, short Shetland night on the pontoon at the sailing club. The water around us quietly teeming with life, which grazed happily on Harmony's slightly furry nether regions. The next morning, about 3, long before Jill was out of bed, I fired up the Volvo and slipped out of Scalloway for our long thrust south. 150 miles, 2 long days and a short night. It should have been okay. We motored through a greasy rolling morning with our brains slowly turning to diesel knock mush. Luckily, around midday, the wind started to chip up from the east, as promised by the weatherman.
This is perfect. The wind is on the beam. The sea is flat. The sun is shining. We're doing just on 4 knots. We left at about 3 o'clock in the morning and we motored until about 11 o'clock. And then the wind appeared the way it's supposed to. Southeast, 12 miles an hour, 8 to 12 miles an hour, which is just lovely. So we're making good, steady progress towards Cape Wrath. Long may it continue. Hopefully it'll be a rather dull but delightful journey. Fula is just disappearing. Just about see it. and Fair Isle is now gone. 5 and a bit knots, which is pretty much as fast as the boat would go, and 88 miles to go. We're just coming up to halfway, which is Noop Head. We're just passing Noop Head. We got a bit confused earlier, but and then we're going to drift away from here and down to Cape Rock. So that's where we're going to be going tonight. It's now 9:30. And the sun is going to set fairly soon. Should be a good sunset with any luck. We're going along nicely at 5.1 knots. There's a bit of the flood tide is coming down here a little bit to help us. There's Noop Head. So with any luck, as I come down this coast, I should see all the lighthouses blinking at me tonight. But the night time will only last about 2 hours, 2.5 hours probably. Broadreach, one reef in the main. So this is Westray here.
Fairly soon we were making excellent progress. I'd pencilled in Stromness at the mouth of Scapa Flow as a place to stop for the night, should it be necessary. But we were heading south at almost 6 knots and travel lust started to take over and cloud my vision. The sun went down about 10. By 11:15 the light was starting to really fade and the wind was chipping up.
Mr. Genoa up. So I'm going to Loch Erribold, which is give us some shelter, and we'll just sit there until the wind allows us to get safely round Cape Rock. Cape Rock is quite a frightening place, so this is the best option. Sadly, Loch Erribold is 41 miles away. So we will get there and then hide. Of course, by the time we get there, this says it's going to take us 13 hours to get there. Take less than that. But either this wind will have dropped or it will still be going, in which case I shall find there.
I sincerely apologise for dragging you away from adventuring in Shetland. I hope you're enjoying the film, and if you wish to skip this reminder then you can watch the rest via my website, linked below, where all the films are free of this sort of bollocks. While there, you'll have a chance to look at a beautifully crafted and wittily worded PayPal button, which most of you will, it almost goes without saying, ignore. At the moment, each episode of KTL is watched right to the end by about 6,000 old blokes, mostly small boat sailors just like me, aged between 50 and 70, half from North America and half from the UK. We are an elite among YouTubers, not only because of the unique demographic, but because we're intelligent enough to watch a sailing film that's 45 minutes long and has no bikinis, shopping malls or beach bars in it. Instead, it has real sailing in interesting locations, some not inconsiderable wit, and some eruditely expressed interesting facts about the places I've taken you to. I used to cover the costs of KTL by selling DVDs about the journey, but about 18 months ago, as the man from Sony said, DVD sales appear to have fallen off a cliff. The transition from selling discs to the Buskers Cup has not been a smooth one for KTL. More people than ever are watching the films, but fewer than ever are chipping in. Needless to say, YouTube shares not a brass farthing with me for the adverts it pushes at you both before and during these films. The almost complete absence of cash flow means that the Centaur was sold in January for £8,000, which is about what the two market leaders SV Delos and La Vagabond earn each in a week. I had planned to sail the Centaur to the Outer Hebrides, St Kilda, around the back of Ireland and then up the Shannon, making well-shot, entertaining, informative films along the way. Some marvellous stories and places I would have shared with you, I'm sure you'll agree. It was, I confess, the first time I've ever sold a boat I really wanted to keep. So filming on KTL has now stopped. At the moment I have enough material in the can for 10 more films about the west coast of Scotland. After that, well, it's up to you guys. As I said, the two top sailing video series are bringing in around $9,000 a week, but then they have lovely breasts. And being caught by your missus watching the bikini girls late at night on the 50-inch TV is something to be avoided now, isn't it, gents? Protest all you like that you're watching a film about sailing. Your wife will suspect your motives. Let's face it, watching bikini girls young enough to be your daughter or even your granddaughter besporting themselves on the foredecks of a $200,000 yacht in the Bahamas, emoting at dolphins, while waving their partially covered delectable tushies in the general direction of their semi-tumescent camera-wielding boyfriends is okay, but a bit embarrassing for a man of your age. KTL is, as you know, in a class of its own. Intelligent, witty, informative, and I take my ordinary boat to some amazing places where there are very few bikinis and no beach bars at all. Apart from the occasional entirely justified profanity, the films are fit for watching in mixed company. As a result, lots of the blokes can watch these smut-free intelligent sailing travelogues with their wives. Now, here's a story from a typical KTL tapper. Let's call him Dave from Arkansas. If people do PayPal me some money, I always send hand-crafted emails of thanks. Dave sent me $11. I said, thanks, Dave, called him a splendid fellow and asked why $11. He said he gave me $1 and then thought that wasn't enough. Well, I didn't know how to ungive you $1, so I added 10. Besides, he said, I only did it 'cause my wife made me. So I emailed back and asked him to expand on that last comment. He said that he was watching on his big telly while she was in the room doing her crochet. She looked up at one point and asked where the film was coming from because it sounds like the BBC. The films are made by an English sailor. Well, why does he make them, Dave? She asked. Because other sailors give him money, apparently, said Dave. Do you, Dave? She asked him politely. No, was the shamefaced answer. Then, said Dave, she gave me one of those looks she reserves for the dog when it's pooped in the kitchen. So, said Dave, I sent you $11 so that she would never give me one of those looks again. I'm proud to say that Dave is now a regular tapper and correspondent, and his lovely wife Chanella now looks upon Dave as an altruistic patron of the art of slow, intelligent sailing. So if you want KTL to carry on, then you'll have to chip in. If you don't, well, after the next 9 films, that'll be the end of it. On the bright side, there'll be lots more entirely vacuous bikini sailing films for you to watch. It's up to you, chaps. Now back to Shetland. The Firth is a formidable body of water with tides that run up to 8 knots as the surplus from the Atlantic slops back and forth to the North Sea, squeezing itself between Orkney and the mainland as it does so. To go there with a 36-hour-old weather forecast could be a pretty risky thing to do. Up until 11:30 at night, the ever-strengthening wind and tide were running in the same direction. The waves were big but smooth. At that stage, I still thought it would be okay. It was getting too windy and wet to carry on filming.
What did you say?
The waves are getting bigger.
They are.
So forgive me if I go a bit Radio 4 on you. You know that both I and Jill and the boat survived the next few hours. I took chances with the Pentland Firth and paid the price. Then about midnight the tide turned, and by 12:30 AM it was bloody horrible, the worst I've ever been out in. Jill retreated below and took to her berth in the forepeak and waited for it all to be over. She was behaving rationally. As a sailor's daughter, she knew that she had to keep warm and ready for action should it be necessary to call her out into the cockpit. There was no point in her getting wet and cold as well. I put the companionway boards in and pulled the hatch over. I sat disconsolately in the leeward puddle that filled the corner of the cockpit and tried to stay out of as much of the weather as I could. You could see in the last shots I took at about 11:15 that it was starting to get bad. These were wind with tide. There was no more than a shirt's worth of red genoa out. The boat was reaching along generally towards the south at 5 knots. Those twin keels were making her hunker down into the water, and the westerly knuckle was turning away the worst of it. The drive in the hull gave the tiller pilot, slaving away heroically inside its plastic bag, lots of forward motion to work with. But we were being driven inexorably to the east by the flood tide. The wind was howling in the rigging. Spray from the confused waves was regularly coming over the dodges. In retrospect, the Centaur was doing really well. I, for my part, sat in the corner under the spray hood and thought about life and tried to count my blessings, but the fears started bubbling to the surface. Drowning is always a possibility for any sailor, but the truth is that most recreational sailor deaths are in a dinghy 50 yards from the shore. Not many of us drown at sea. That night, huddled in the cockpit of a 45-year-old yacht I'd bought for £1 just over 6 months earlier, I started contemplating the things I had left undone and that could go wrong. The furling gear might give way and release a whole Genoa in one howling crack. The tiller pilot might pack up, leaving me, a weakened and tired 60-year-old man, to hand steer. The rudder might break off. The rig might come down. This was turning into a bad sailing experience. For a while, I contemplated calling the RNLI, but in the end I decided that the humiliation would have been too great. Nothing had broken. I was just tired, cold, and a bit frightened. I contemplated turning downwind and running before the storm, but I wasn't sure that I could outrun the waves. Better to keep them coming onto the bow quarter with the boat sailing hard and consistently. The momentum of that Centaur hull, the gentle suck of those keels, kept her going pretty well, and in the right direction. There was only 3 hours of darkness. 3 hours! The perception of time at sea is a slippery thing. It felt like 2 days. The relentless slamming, the confused seas, the waves looming white and huge and threatening coming at us out of the gloom, the needle-sharp ice-cold spray sweeping the cockpit again and again. As a solo sailor, if I get myself into trouble and die, then it's just me. If I have male friends on board, then at least they were volunteers and were prepared to face the risks. But if I were to drown my darling wife hiding below, fully dressed, under her sleeping bag and trying to ignore the relentless slamming of the waves against the westerly knuckle, I would feel terrible because she was only there because she loves me. It went on and on and on. Then about 3 the lights started to appear, but it was still 3 more hours of this strong westerly current and the easterly wind refusing to let up. but at least I could see the big ones coming. In the gloom I started to hallucinate. The creaming tops of the rollers became white picket fences. The curve of a wave turned into the sweeping bow of a schooner. I realised that I was dropping in and out of consciousness, just a few seconds at a time. Eventually we started to close with the north coast of Scotland, where I was hoping to get some shelter. We turned due west along the coast and things settled down a bit. I rolled out some Genoa. The engine was on tick over so that I could slam the throttle over to outrun any following breaking waves that threatened to overtake us. Eventually about 5 things calmed down a little. I realised that we were going to live, so I slid the hatch back, grabbed the camera and fired off a few shots. I guess a good journalist would have kept the camera running through the whole experience, even if it had destroyed the camera. But imagine if we had drowned and the camera survived and my last film was of an old buffoon shouting at a lens. I only ran it for a few minutes and then went back to getting us safely out of the wind and into the perfect safety of Loch Erebol. We turned into the loch at about 3 in the afternoon. The wind was still strong, and with the occasional wicked squall and burst of rain, it was still hostile for the camera. We motored down to the main anchorage and dropped the hook just to the north of the Erebol Tombolo, the weird double-sided beach that offers perfect shelter from the easterly. We fell asleep at about 5 in the afternoon, and the next we knew of the world was just after dawn the next day. We both slept for 14 hours. I must say, we both felt a little the worse for wear. But Scotland had come good on us. Look at this for an anchorage.
The journey down from Shetland was extraordinary. The first bit, as far as Orkney, was great, and we should have stopped there, but it was going so well. As per my plan, I decided to keep going, and then that following 24 hours was pretty gnarly. It was only 12 hours actually. Just a horrible, horrible slog. We had to cut across the Pentland Firth, which was doing what the Pentland Firth does, just kicking up some horrible waves. It was windy, much windier than the weatherman had predicted, and I have to say there were times during that period when I questioned why I wanted to be a sailor. Now we're in Loch Erebol, which one of the deepest in the north of Scotland. They used to use it for assembling the convoys for the Atlantic, and for the northern convoys. The sailors used to call it Lake Orrible because it was the beginning of a horrible experience for them.